How is everybody doing here? I am Colin Bashnagel with another video here. Today we got the Florida schedule prediction. Make sure you guys check out my TikTok right here. I definitely pointed the wrong way again. Right here, Bash's CFB show on TikTok, and then the playlist up here that I'm popping up. That's got all the schedule predictions and the previews that you need. I just ask for you to like and subscribe, especially if we like this. The rival of the Florida Gators did really well. Florida State over 2,000 views, which is big for a tiny channel like mine. And any sort of growth is awesome growth. So I just want to shout you guys out. Thank you for all your comments, feedback. Thank you for liking the video, subscribing, those of you that subscribed, and just thank you for tuning in. I think that's the big thing that I want to make clear, that I love that you guys were able to enjoy that. And some of you guys said, hey, man, I'm going to come back. You did a good job. And one of you guys were like, I'm going to come back. You did a good job. This is what you didn't do a good job of, though. And I took note, and I'm trying to do better. Now, I did not type down the stats for this video. And the reason why is because I forgot until I already clicked the live button for Twitch, and it's already 10 o'clock at night. So I just want to get this done, be able to go to bed, because, of course, I wake up mostly every single day at like 5 a.m., 4 a.m., With that being said, let's talk about the Florida Gators here. Now, we have the Florida Gators with some key departures. They lost a lot to the NFL draft, starting with quarterback Anthony Richardson. That's going to be a topic of conversation in this video, is the quarterback position. Wide receiver Justin Shorter. I actually don't think they're too short, pun intended. Okay, that was a bad one. You guys can clown me down below in the comments. But I don't think they're going to fall short at the wide receiver position this year, but Justin Shorter's gone. Offensive tackle, Richard Gorich is gone, as well as guard Osiris Torrance, which was a high draft pick, especially for a guard. Bretton Cox, he's gone. The transfer, of course, former transfer from Georgia. He was on this defense last year as an edge rusher. He's gone. Gervin Dexter, gone as well. Amari Burney, gone, as well as Ventrell Miller, two linebackers. And then Rashad Torrance, gone at safety with Trey Dean. All right, transfer now. I'm not going to make too much mention of Jalen Kitna with this, because I hope he never plays college football again. That's just my personal thoughts there. Lorenzo Lingard is off to Akron, while Naquan Wright is going off to USF. Both these moves kind of make sense. Maybe Lingard settling a little bit, but I mean, he's pairing up with a guy in Joe Moorhead that does a good job there at Akron. So those two guys leaving with a loaded running back room makes sense. Wide receivers, Xavier Henderson going to Cincinnati. Trent Whitmore is going to UCF, which is kind of surprising. I thought he could definitely make an impact on this receiver room this upcoming year, but that just shows that some younger guys are probably catching him. Then finally, you have Dejon Reynolds going to Pitt, and then the tight end, Nick Elksins. Did I say that right? Elksness. Pardon me. I've never seen him play. He's going off to South Carolina regardless, or at least I don't remember him playing. I just watched a couple of games earlier today, so that name does not ring a bell other than writing it down here. You lost 3 offensive tackles and 1 interior offensive lineman. Those tackles are Michael Tarquin to USC, Joshua Braun to Arkansas, and then David Connor to Colorado, while that interior guy is also going to Colorado. His name is Yusef Mugharbil. Okay, I tried. Edge rusher Antoine Dowell going to Virginia Tech, while 2 defensive linemen, Jalen Lee going to LSU and Chris Thomas going to Marshall. Linebackers Chief Borders going to Nebraska, David Reese going to California, and DeJuan Black going to Temple. Defensive backs, we're going to start with the cornerbacks that are leaving. Avery Helm going to TCU, Corey Collier going to Nebraska, and Jordan Young going to Cincinnati. At the safety position, they lost Donovan McMillan to Pitt, Travis Johnson going to Missouri, Kamar Wilcoxon, going to Temple, and then long snapper Marco Ortiz is going to Nebraska. All right, let's talk about what they are bringing in the transfer portal, and of course talking about the quarterback position, which is a big conversation piece. You can't start the transfer portal with anybody else but Graham Mertz. Quarterback from Wisconsin right there. Running back Cameron Carroll coming in from Texas, Tulane, as an experienced player right there. They brought in 3 offensive tackles. So you lose 3 offensive tackles, you bring 3 in. Those 3 are Keonta Goodwin from Kentucky, who's actually a really good player. Damian George from Bama is a really good player, too. Kind of had his struggles at Bama, kind of ridiculed a little bit, but I still think he's a pretty solid player. Lindell Hudson from FIU also coming in. Interior offensive lineman Micah Meskua coming in from Baylor. Defensive side of the ball, we're going to talk about two defensive linemen, Caleb Banks coming in from Louisville and Cameron Jackson coming in from Memphis. Two big pickups right there. Taraja Mitchell coming in from Ohio State at linebacker. Same with Deuce Spurlock coming in from Michigan. Also from Michigan, safety RJ Moten. And speaking of safety, you have Ronald Nunnery coming in from Houston. All right, potential breakout players. I'm only going to name one because I feel like he could potentially make a big, splash in this offense. You know what? I'll name two. Dante Sanders, the tight end, and then also Andy Jean is a freshman I would watch out for if I were you guys. So, with that being said, let's talk about this roster. We're going to save quarterback for last for the offense. Montrell Johnson, Trevor Etienne, they're back at running back. I talked about Cam Carroll. He's in. Then they have the freshman Trayon Webb. They have plenty of running backs in this room. They are really, really good. Nothing to shrug about. If you talk about this running back room, you're bringing back Montrell Johnson, who was over 800 yards, Trevor Etienne, who was over 700 yards, 16 combined touchdowns. They'll be okay at the running back position this year. That 1-2 punch, very, very good. At the wide receiver spot, Caleb Douglas is a guy that he kind of had his moments last year, had a couple of touchdowns, but for the most part, he's looking to take on a bigger role in his sophomore year. As a freshman, he was really good. Marcus Burke, kind of an unknown right there. How good is he going to be is going to be the real question. He did not get a whole lot of run, not even nearly as much run as Caleb Douglas did. My gosh, Douglas. Of course, though, the experience that we all know about is Ricky Pearsall. He was the leading receiver on last year's team, a really good one. He's displayed it with that long touchdown against Florida State last year. A really good player. When you lose four of your top five receivers and, Zipperer gone, Reynolds gone, Henderson gone, Shorter gone, then you're going to need that type of experience. But a guy I also want to watch out for, I talked about Andy Jean, but watch out for Ty Chico. I literally was just practicing this. I know how it is because there's Ramad Chakawu Bowman. I hope I said that right. Again, Ty Chakawu Bowman. I should be a lot better with this, man. I don't know what is with me. He's a guy that definitely could make some plays for sure for this offense. Chakawu Bowman. I'm going to go with that and hope that's okay with you guys. And also, you can watch out for Jaquavion Fraziers, who's another younger player. He's a junior coming up, who's kind of like Marcus Burke, got less run last year. Dante Sanders at tight end. He's going to be your starter with Arliss Boardingham trying to take a step forward, or maybe Hayden Henson trying to take a step forward as young second-year players in the program. This offensive line is interesting. It's nice and pieced together. You have an Austin Barber, who's a very talented young player in Austin Barber. You have Austin Barber. This is not my best video, but I have clearly struggled in a lot of videos here. He's definitely a talented player regardless. Going to start there at the left tackle position. That other spot is up for grabs between Damian George and Keonta Goodwin, but I think that's going to be Goodwin's at the end of the day. But you definitely have good rotational value with him, as well as Lindell Hudson coming in as well. On the interior, Richie Leonard and Micah Meskua is probably going to be your guards, and then Kingsley Egwakon. He's going to be the center, and I definitely know that Egwakon is the correct pronunciation for that. All right, defensively, Justice Boone. He's going to be the edge rusher for this team. Expect for true freshman Kelby Collins or TJ Searcy to make an impact off the edge. Princely Human Milan. I think, again, another name I practice. Human Milan. He's got two brothers that are out in Nebraska, one of them, and we already talked about them. I'm going to say Human Milan. I can't remember how it's supposed to be pronounced. I'm thinking about this too much. But he's got two brothers. One's at Tarleton. One's at Nebraska. He's the most talented of the group. No offense to those other guys, but he's a really, really good player. Going to be the starter here with Jack Pyburn backing him up. The interior, Chris McClellan, my gosh, McClellan. And then you got Cam Jackson. Cam Jackson, more of the proven commodity in the inside. At linebacker, you got a little bit of a question to Roger Mitchell, who, of course, transferred in from Ohio State. He's going to get a chance here in his 6th year, as well as Shamar James. Two opposite players right here, a younger player and Shamar James, who's looking to play a whole lot more this upcoming year. Now, if you take a look at what they had last year at linebacker, you lose Ventrell Miller and you lose a guy in Amari Burney. Those are big losses, and those are losses that you got to replace. These are your 3rd and 4th leading tacklers from last year. You lost your top 5 leading tacklers, Shamar James, the one coming back that was, up there as that 3rd linebacker that played. This is his chance to really step up and be that main linebacker, especially that outside linebacker, Shamar James, name to watch for. Manny Nunnerly is good depth piece, Derek Wingo as well. All right, in the secondary, you can talk about this secondary when you start with Jalen Kimber. How good is he going to be this upcoming year for the Florida Gators? That is going to be the big question, because you are talking about a situation where you lose guys in the secondary, specifically when you talk about Trey Dean, but you lose Rashad Torrance. So the safety play is not going to be as quality as it had been. So that means the corners likely are going to have to play better. Jalen Kimber is the guy that has to play a lot of good ball, a guy who really didn't play a whole lot last year. He had an interception, but overall he didn't get a ton of run. He's going to be a big playmaker for this team. Their top corner last year and their top cover guy, though, Jason Marshall, he is back on the opposite side, and I like what he brings to the table. I think he's a really good quarterback, definitely able to play well in the SEC. Kamari Wilson, Miguel Mitchell, those are the two safeties that are expected to replace Dean and Torrance. Again, Dean and Torrance made their presence known last year. Two of the top tacklers off of last year's team definitely made, especially Trey Dean, definitely made a huge impact on this team. So we'll see how they are able to go. Just for comfort, though, they brought in R.J. Moten to help with the safety spot. I think he's going to get plenty of run, the transfer from Michigan. And Jordan Castel, or is it Castle or Castle? I'm going to say Castle. Double L, I'm going to say that. He's a really talented freshman, but I'm not sure if he's going to be ready to play back there. Now, of course, cornerback depth, a little bit of a concern. Devin Moore is the guy that was a freshman last year. He needs a big sophomore leap to become that, backup outside corner, and Jakeem Jackson as well as a freshman might be thrust into some serious action, especially if, kind of like Ohio State last year, my team, they have some injury and they're thin at corner. And then, of course, Jadarius Perkins, he's going to be in at that nickel position. He's definitely a more experienced player. He's a really good one. And shoot, maybe they kick him outside if that's what they decide to do, if they say that Jalen Kimber is not ready to play outside all alone. All right, that was a rough preview, but regardless, and I think, that was a rough breakdown, but regardless, we have the schedule right here, over under 4.5 wins. Let's see if they do that. We're going to get straight into the schedule prediction. Let's do this. All right. On the road at Utah, I think Utah gets the revenge. I don't think Utah is going to be as good of a team, but Florida also might struggle out of the gates early, especially offensively with a brand new quarterback, not as talented as Anthony Richardson, who played pretty well against Utah. Now, Graham Mertz, we saw flashes of it, and I'd never talked about the quarterback position. I'm just now realizing it. Graham Mertz is going to be the starter. I think there's no secret behind it. I mean, who else are you going to go with? Jack Miller? That was a disaster in the bowl game against Oregon State. This is a Utah team that's better that was better last year than Oregon State. I don't think they're going to be that good this year. I think Utah's in for a little bit of a down year, still not much of one. That Utah preview is coming. This is one I do think Utah gets. They get the revenge after a game that they thought like they won, or they had in the bag. They had won in the humidity and all that. Well, guess what? They got to go up into the mountains. They got to go to Salt Lake. But McNeese should not be a problem for the guys from Ben Hill Griffin, and I would not be surprised if they give Tennessee a game. Again, I am questioning whether or not this secondary is going to be able to do a great job. And when you got a big arm quarterback like Joe Milton, all it takes is for him to be accurate with some of these deep balls a couple of times. Replacing two pretty good safeties, a big deal. This was a little bit of a shootout, kind of an offensive back game. Florida had a chance late off of an onside kick recovery, and Anthony Richardson, hit as he throws. Hail Mary fell short. I think Tennessee's a better team. Wouldn't be surprised if this game is close in the Swamp, but I'm going to go with the Tennessee Volunteers here. Before you turn around and beat Charlotte, should have no problem there. That would be an embarrassing loss. On the road at Kentucky, I think this one's definitely going to be a tough game for sure for the Florida Gators. This could be a game that the secondary makes a statement. The safeties in the secondary as a whole just grows up a little bit, but I don't think they will. Again, I think Kentucky has their best wide receiver room that they've had underneath Stoops there, Mark Stoops. And they also have a quarterback in Devin Leary who may or may not be able to be the guy that distributes it. I'm not going to be overly high on Kentucky, but I do think that this is the most potential that a Kentucky team has had under Mark Stoops, at least as much as that 2018 team. But that 2018 team had a ceiling because of their style. I think this style is more conducive to success in the SEC. Against Vanderbilt, I think Vanderbilt and Clark Lee is building kind of the right things. It's just so hard to win at Vanderbilt. I think Florida gets it done in the Swamp before going on the road and beating South Carolina. I think a lot of people are going to be a little bit too high on South Carolina. They got gutted in a transfer portal. I've talked about this ad nauseum. We'll talk about South Carolina someday. I'm going to go with Florida with a win going into the bye week at 4-3, which is not that disappointing right there. Losing to Georgia, of course, is going to be disappointing, but I think that's an inevitability that any Florida fan understands is probably going to happen. Now, that experience could be a good thing or a bad thing for a quarterback like Graham Mertz. I think they can go and beat Arkansas the next week before a back-to-back road trip against LSU and Missouri. Arkansas, they have a decent team. I'm still not convinced that secondary is going to be great. I also am not sure who KJ Jefferson is going to be throwing the ball to if they got good receivers, and I think this plays well into Florida's hands as far as a matchup goes. At LSU is going to be a tough one for you to convince me that they can go on the road in November and win in Baton Rouge. I just don't see it happening, especially a night game if it happened to be that in Tiger Stadium. It would be cool to see Florida win this game, but I'm going to go with the LSU Tigers in that one. At Missouri, you guys know my thoughts on Missouri. I think they're a really good team with a sound defense and an elite playmaker in Luther Burden, who's going to take a year two step. Bringing in a guy like Theo Weiss, I've talked about them. I think they're going to be able to run the ball. I'm going to go with Missouri in that game. And closing out the season, Florida State versus Florida. This is a home game in the Swamp, and I think the energy could potentially be there for an upset late in the season, especially if Florida State is right there on the cusp of the playoff. Let's say they beat LSU or Clemson, and they're 10-1 going into this game. This is an upset that Florida could 100% pull. Not going to predict it, but I do think it's going to be a close game, a lot like last year was. So overall, a disappointing year for Florida, but I don't think you can be too disappointed. I mean, if over-under wins 4.5, this roster is very young and depleted because of how poorly Dan Mullen recruited his last two recruiting cycles as the Florida head coach. So therefore, I think that 5-7 is something you should not be disappointed at, especially if you see glimpses of hope. Having a guy like Ricky Pearsall back is a huge deal, a big-time playmaker like that. Having two running backs like Trevor Etienne and Montrell Johnson, massive to have those guys back. And with those guys back, they have a pretty good ceiling. I was high on this Florida team last year because of those three guys and then a little bit more that they don't have this year. And it kind of slapped me in the face. I think I had them like 8-4 last year, and it kind of slapped me in the face a little bit. They were 2 games under that, and I think this team could potentially win 8 or 9 games. I think you could easily see that Kentucky result flip. They could upset Tennessee or LSU. They could beat Missouri. They could maybe upset Florida State. They could beat Utah. They showed that last year. There's a lot of winnable games on the schedule for Florida. There's also a lot of losable games. Their floor right now is seriously like 3-9. So with that being said, I think that the Florida Gators going 3-5 or 3-5 in conference, but 5-7 overall, not something you should scoff at. Thank you guys for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Again, rough video. I'm sorry. I'm having too many of these, so I need to hold myself to a higher standard and have better prep. and hopefully I do in the future. Busy times for me, but that's okay. I'm going to keep working to make this quality better. So, with that being said, thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Like and subscribe. Check out what we have at the Lowdown Network. We'll see you guys next time.